Hey guys, Gumble here from MMOs.com, and today I'm grumbling about armored warfare. Vehicle shooters are surprisingly popular genre, and by this point nearly every avenue of transportation has been explored. Just waiting on Bus Fighter 2015 to come out. But that hasn't stopped My.com, the publisher of Skyforge, from entering the arena wearing their best patent costume. Armored Warfare is a tactical tank shooter, but unlike World of Tanks, it's set against the backdrop of the modern world, and it's rendered by CryEngine. People have been saying in reviews and around the web that it is just a doppelganger of World of Tanks, but that's unjustified. It's an unfair conclusion. The game needs to be played and recognized for the novel mechanics that it does present. And while they are subtle and don't take the primary focus of the game, there's enough there to distinguish itself among the genre. And it does breathe new life into a concept that has overstayed its welcome. It's grown tiresome. There's a vehicle shooter for everything, and Armored Warfare is certainly not the last of its kind. There's plenty more to come. To start, the game looks good. Even in my first PvP match, I realized how well Obsidian Entertainment used the CryEngine. They made the world feel alive. Waiting the mandatory 30 seconds, I saw helicopters swarming across the sky, and a plane crashes into a clay city in the distance, immolating. And I remember thinking, oh, this is great. Your tank squadron acts like just one piece on a chessboard in this huge global war. It creates a more immersive experience. And it's not just NPCs making the world feel alive. The environments are crisp. Rusted sunsets show off CryEngine's amazing lighting effects. And there's thick vegetation everywhere, blanketing the landscape. If you ever played Crisis, the ferns, I swear they're the same ferns. It looks good. It maybe even looks great. It's not cutting edge, but you can't deny that Armored Warfare is a good-looking game. And nearly every object on the map is destructible, or at least the ones you would expect your tank to be able to roll through. You're not rolling through a nuclear silo. But almost every object, whether it's a wall, or a tree, or some peasant's meager house, bunkers under the colossal force of your 62 metric ton rolling cannon. But sometimes the animation effect is a bit disconcerting. There's a missing connection between the tank and the environmental object. Some leap of faith between cause and effect. And it really has to do with the tank is a giant square. Or at least that's how it seemed to me. You're a giant square moving across this landscape, and sometimes you hit pipes. The way they break is irreflective of your tank's dimensions. Or they break before you even touch them, as if your tank's body extends further than you can actually see. Now, this didn't happen every time, so I'm not sure if it actually had to do with lag or not, but as someone who's overanalyzing, I noticed it quite a few times, and it was a bit annoying, but not game-breaking. PvP games typically function like a deathmatch, even when there's a secondary objective that secures victories, such as capturing the enemy's base, which is just a circular point on the map. Standing in the point counts down a timer. Timer reaches 0, you win. But each team starts on opposite sides of the map, as expected, and then tanks branch out along the various trails on the map. Some maps it feels more like a MOBA because the lanes are so confined, but no matter what path you take, it always leads to a firefight. And once an enemy is in your line of sight, it's a simple matter to point and click and fire. Although your tank will have to be grounded, and you do have to worry about the terrain, which, if you've played World of Tanks, is to be expected because the barrel can't go below the threshold of the tank. So anytime you see a tank on a hill, he's the prime real estate to blow up because he probably can't aim at you. I did notice that players tended to huddle together, and it made it really easy to fire off volleys because it's much easier to shoot a cluster of targets than a singular bullseye. But since each tank has a different rate of fire, you have to negotiate and understand your tank's mechanics. The patent which a lot of people use because it's called patent 44, has a 6-second reload time, and in between reloading, I'm defenseless. So I have to use cover, giant concrete walls or whatever I can find, peek out and shoot like a surreptitious sniper before going back into cover if I want to survive. But every vehicle in the game is optimized for a certain function. The XM800T is much better equipped to avoid enemy detection, unlike the Patton, which is a hulking mass, while the LAV-150, which is a truck-like vehicle, provides spotting bonuses to ally, increasing the amount of damage those enemies will take when spotting with the LAV-150. So there's a neat array of different vehicles that have different purposes, and it aids to the notion of a game heavily founded on teamwork, although of course in PUGs, teamwork is typically the last thing on anyone's mind. When players spot an enemy tank, their comrades are automatically alerted to the enemy's presence by a blaring red arrow indicator, similar to Battlefield, where you had to press Q. But in Armored Warfare, it's automatic. And it kind of defeats the purpose of flanking, or not the purpose, but it defeats flanking outright. It feels like everyone has wall hacks. You're constantly getting prompted with sightings of enemy players, and it's very easy to spot players because once they are within a certain distance of your tank, as long as they're in front of you, you're going to see them and alert. And since you start on opposite sides of the map and you move towards the middle, everyone's spotting everyone else. And that means that there really isn't a sneaky play style in terms of navigating the map. Instead, the game has a mechanic which is not explained at all. It's poorly introduced, I believe, in a tooltip, which is camouflage. Every single tank in the game has a camouflage stat, which allows it or indicates how well it can blend in with the environment. So when you roll over a bush in the game, at first I thought that I was squashing the bush or vegetation into the earth, and it was misrendering the object, but actually it becomes translucent to indicate that your tank is partially hidden. And in the bottom left-hand side of your screen, there's an environmental camouflage indicator, which is basically a circular segmented lines that light up when a portion of your tank is hidden. And this is a pretty neat mechanic, but Obsidian needs to introduce it better or create a tutorial for it or explain it better, because I didn't know about it until I looked it up. But basically, if a mountain is at my right flank, then the segments on the right side of my tank in the ETI will light up, and the more covered I am, the brighter the segmented lines will be. And the idea is that as a tank, so you're not spotted if you have a well camouflaged or a vehicle with a high camouflage stat, you can sit in a bush and enemy players won't find you. So it's more about understanding the camouflage mechanic and how it relates to your particular vehicle, taking advantage of that to let enemy players slip by you or not see you so you can get the jump on them. So the tactician searches for cover in foliage and around structures. It's interesting. It's an interesting mechanic. I haven't gotten to play with it enough, but I am somewhat disappointed that I have to rely on that mechanic instead of being able to circumnavigate the map and get the jump at enemy players, because I'm pretty much always spotted. It's interesting nonetheless. My favorite aspect of the game is that there are cooperative PVE missions. It's a rare feature in today's overly saturated, multiplayer exclusive market. So you and 4 other players complete objectives combating NPC tanks, and it plays out similarly to a PvP mode match, where the objective is capture the circular point, but you end up killing all the enemy tanks anyway. Although there were secondary objectives as well, such as blow up the 3 generators, which does make it a little more interesting, but ultimately you're just facing an onslaught of enemy behemoths. So, and tactics aren't exclusive to PvP mode either. You could easily be killed by the NPC tanks, especially since there are so many more of them in a PvE match. And while missions can become repetitive, it's a great way to earn experience and money, and then take that to PvP mode because it does reward both. So when you get a new tank, what I would do is I would go and do a bunch of PvE matches, upgrade my tank's modules, and then go back into the PvP arena. And it kind of breaks up the repetitiveness of constantly going into one PvP match after another. I like the fact that they included PvE in the game, and I think it's, you know, applause to Obsidian for including PvE, because a lot of other developers and games similar in the genre just totally ignore the PvE aspect of games today. If you've played any other similarly defined vehicle shooter, then you already know Armored Warfare's advancement system. Completing matches awards money and experience. Experience can then be used to buy new modular upgrades for your tanks, and each tank accumulates its own experience, so you can't accumulate experience on one tank and buy a module on another one. But there are 5 spheres of modular upgrades. There's armor, firepower, mobility, tech, and proven. And proven doesn't count, not only because it sounds odd to say that proven's a category, but because proven is basically you exchanging experience for cash. So when you're in the poorhouse, you just sell yourself for a little money, you get back on your feet. And after you've upgraded a slot, such as buying the 20mm KAD B13-3 autocannon, which I didn't remember, I read that, but you buy that for the M113, then you gotta spend cash to actually equip it. So nothing in the world is free, gotta spend money for everything. And purchasing tanks follows a similar system. You've already seen this in World of Warships, War Thunder, World of Tanks. They all copy each other. You can't hold Armored Warfare for cheating, for looking over his desk at what the guy next to him is doing. Once you've acquired enough once you've proved yourself with a tank, you unlock the next subsequent upgrade in the tech tree. And the tech tree is exactly the same as everything else. I'm surprised. I wish there was a guy that patented this design, because he'd be rich right now suing everybody. But you unlock the next tank, and then you got to purchase it with cash. There are 5 vehicle types, just like many of these other games, and it's a system that feels recycled, rehashed, and boring. I really don't have a better way of going about progression, but it is a bit stale. But at least if you've played these other games, you already know what you're doing. There are upgrade features I do enjoy, but they're subtle, and the game does a terrible job or a non-existent job at presenting them to you, and they are probably often overlooked. Every single tank you own has a crew attached to it, and as you gain experience, so do they, albeit at a far slower rate. But as they gain experience, they unlock equipable talents, and it makes for a deeper level of micromanagement that lets you customize your playstyle. So you can equip a talent that increases aiming speed by a minor amount. And along with your crew upgrades, you also have base building, which is an odd feature, and I thought it was odd when I played Metal Gear Solid 5, but it works. It's interesting. Every day you receive 100 raw materials, and you use that to construct your base. And the base doesn't really do anything besides providing bonuses. So if I construct a command center, it increases the amount of free XP I earn, whereas constructing the academy increases the amount of XP my commander earns by 2%. And while these are minor features and not central to gameplay, it adds depth, and it also breaks up the tedium of constantly hopping in and out of PvP matches or PvE matches. And that helps make the game feel like less of a grind, and I already feel that this game is less grindy than many of the other vehicle shooters, because after nearly every match you are buying a new upgrade, although that is typical to most of these games. And I'm sure as time goes on, the grind increases. But map variety and having the crew and base building also repels tediousness. And you always have dollar bills hanging out of your pocket to upgrade some module or purchase a new tank. And also, because you're not limited in the number of slots for tanks, you're not constantly sacrificing an older vehicle to make way for a new one, so you can still play with those older vehicles. Although experience, I'm sure, as you progress, which I haven't gotten to advanced levels yet, I'm sure the grind becomes tedious, and that initial zeal dissipates, and you may become tempted to increase that experience accumulation. And of course, we gotta talk about the game's in-game currency. Gold, the most original name for in-game currency. Really, I always appreciate when games try to do something different with their cash currency. Maybe call it gears. That'd be cool. Anyway, besides purchasing Founders Packs, some of which are kind of ludicrously priced, you can purchase gold in-game, and gold can be exchanged for experience, which in turn gets exchanged for money. It's kind of this double transaction. Or it can be used to purchase premium vehicles, such as the T92. But I wouldn't label these 9-carat vehicles as pay-to-win. Judging them by their stats, because I don't inject money into these games normally, they're more well-rounded than their free-to-play counterparts, but they don't have any significant advantage over the free-to-play vehicles. It seems more like for lazy players who don't want to grind all the way through. Now, the main thing you get out of purchasing gold is premium time. So this is where the advantage comes in, and it's not even a pay-to-win advantage, but players who buy gold will earn 75% more gold and experience. Now that may sound unfair because earning more experience, earning more gold translates into more upgrades and more tanks. But the game has a pretty good matchmaking system from what I can tell, and players in the same tier of tanks are always matched together. So even if they are earning more experience and gold faster, they'll likely be matched with other players who are also earning more gold and experience faster. So a paying person using higher tier vehicles can't enter a lower tier match and dominate the battlefield. Of course, that would ruin the game for the vast majority of the player base. So it's a rather fair model. I think that it exists for players who are truly invested in the experience, as this normally happens with vehicle shooters. And as you reach those higher tiers, it becomes such a grind and the game stops being fun. So if you want to keep playing and you're really motivated to get those higher tier tanks, you feel compelled to reach into your pocket and break out all those dollar bills that we know everyone's carrying. So it's a rather fair system. I saw some people calling it pay to win and unfair, but it seems like a rather robust system to me. I think my.com has a pretty good, or I guess it's Obsidian. I don't know who monetizes, but they have a pretty good system in place. Do I recommend Armored Warfare? Well, Armored Warfare is a highly stylized arcade tank shooter, and it does feature enough distinct elements to differentiate itself, to make it stand out from a highly copy-pasta genre where many things look indistinguishable. I mean, at face value, it has a similar user interface, it has similar gameplay modes, and it has a nearly identical progression system, all seemingly designed by one guy. But there are enough features in the game that would make it preferable to a similarly stylized title. PVE, the micromanagement systems, and the gorgeous environments, along with some other subtleties such as the way ammo is used in the game, which I did not discuss, definitely place it on a higher tier than other games. As of right now, I would say Armored Warfare may be the quintessential tank shooter. Whether or not it stands out for general audience's eyes, long term, I can't judge yet. But I had a lot of fun, and I'm actually going to go play it after finishing this. So anyway, that's been my humble opinion about Armored Warfare. If you want to check out the full review, you can head to the link in the description below. Until next time, see ya!